Hello, everyone. This is Shelley Stockwell Nicholas, and I'm so happy you're with us at Free Hypnosis-IHF. I have an amazing guest. She is, you'll see. She's adorable, and she's brilliant, and she's incredibly talented in what she does. Her name is Genvièv St. Clair, and she has won awards. She is a forensic and clinical hypnotherapist and educator, and she's very good at educating. You'll see her on the internet quite a bit. You'll enjoy her videos. They're terrific. And she is very, very interested in brain plasticity and how to help people be their best and just to use their imagination to just fly high in every way. And today I'm very, very interested to hear in general about her, but I'm going to focus her, if I can, on a particular interest of mine, and that is forensic hypnosis. Welcome, Genvièv, to our show.
Thank you, Shelley. It's a pleasure being here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
How did you get so interested in the mind and hypnosis and neuroplasticity?
Well, very simply, I had to learn how to work with my brain in order to survive the unsurvivable. I'm a trauma survivor. My skull was fractured when I was 2 years old, and I faced extreme life-threatening injuries through the course of my childhood. And, doing so, what happened to me, what happened to all accident victims and victims of extreme crimes and extreme threats, is when you're in between the life and death, when you have lost your ability to protect yourself, your mind splits out of the body into what we call in medicine peri-traumatic dissociation. I'm a trauma emergency medicine first responder as well, so I have some medical background. In medicine, we call that peri-traumatic dissociation when you have lost your ability to protect yourself and your brain is not capable of processing the amount of physical, mental, and emotional terror and pain that you're facing. You enter that state that is the state of the subconscious mind, where you no longer feel any physical sensations. You no longer feel any emotions. You're basically watching and witnessing the situations free of emotions and sensations. So it is an incredible state of mind to experience, one that I do not wish on anybody because it means your life is severely at threat. But when you experience this repeatedly, as I have as a child, where you have very little abilities to protect yourself as a child, when you experience this repeatedly, it just shows you another place of mind where you can achieve things that you cannot achieve from the conscious level of the mind. So having had to experience this repeatedly in very early childhood, I became fascinated right from the get-go into the ability for the mind to help us protect ourselves from harm, survive and thrive, regardless of the extreme adverse circumstances that we're facing. So by the time I was 15 years old, I was already hypnotizing classmates and friends, always with a therapeutic approach in mind. I was never interested in the tricks and the show tricks. More importantly, to me, it was always, how do we survive when our well-being, our safety is at threat? So I became, from childhood on, a researcher in plasticity, brain plasticity. And then I ended up studying with all of the great thought leaders all over the world, and also in medicine and in research. And so I never stopped studying. And my entire life is dedicated to helping those who are victims of abuse, of victims of threats, victims of extreme adversity.
How did you integrate yourself so that you were not just detached from what was happening, but lived in your body and mind? How did you do that?
Well, that's very, very good question, Shelley. It is. What the problem is with peri-traumatic dissociation is when you take the habit of dissociating from the body early on. So initially it happens during the trauma, during the extreme threats, and then you go back into your body, obviously. But then as you experience it repeatedly, you can take the habit of dissociating anytime you feel uncomfortable. And that's a challenge that I've had to overcome by myself, with my colleagues, with my research. How do we stop ourselves from dissociating all the time? So it opened a door, if you will, to the realm of the subconscious mind and what we can do with brain plasticity and trauma recovery. At the same time, It presents, in fact, one of the episodes on my YouTube channel is how to help yourself when you're experiencing dissociation, how to get back in the body. So I've studied and I continue studying.
So what do you say to yourself when you know something's haywire and you detach? What is the inner dialogue or the inner vibration or the color, or what do you do specifically to put yourself back reintegrate yourself to the body mind now?
When you are dissociating initially is a time of life and death. You do not want to be back in the body. That's the very reason why you're dissociating.
Yes.
Because you're experiencing catastrophic injuries. Your brain is not capable of processing. That's why you're dissociating. So you definitely don't want to go back in the body at that time. It's a between life and death basically state. I mean, without being paranormal, it's when your body is attacked at a level that your brain can no longer process, your mind splits out. So after the fact, when you're being collected by emergency medicine first responders and you're being treated, you'll get back in the body. The problem is if you're doing this repeatedly, pardon my French, I'm obviously a foreigner.
You're gorgeous. I love your accent. It's beautiful.
So when you're doing this repeatedly, you can take the habit of dissociating, which is not very helpful if you're not in a life threat. So how do we reconnect from dissociation when
you became a woman and you're 15 years old, you're no longer subjected to that. And this keeps happening because
it didn't keep happening when I wasn't threatened. It happened when I was threatened. But
so you naturally integrated.
Of course, you do that after dissociation. You reintegrate in the body once you're safe again. Of course, yes. You don't stay out. No, it's just a. Well,
I know some people are out there. They never get back in their body.
Yeah, I could understand why, because you're floating in nirvana. So it's like when they call hypno junkies, right? When they want to come back, they say open your eyes, and the person is like, no way, I'm feeling good and staying there. No, but this said, there are methodologies. I study constantly with the trauma centers and DBT. And there are methodologies that help us ground ourselves back in our body. It goes with the breath, feeling your toes, the touch, the sensations, the sense, smelling some aromatic herb or an essential oil, touching something, splashing water on your face. There are many methodologies when you're in a state of dissociation that is not necessary, that you're not threatened, that help you ground yourself back in the body. It's part of trauma recovery, basically.
Right. So one of the things that I use, which you probably use as well, is I use eye rolls. So I will rotate my eyes one direction, the other direction, blink a few times, and then give myself a kind of a hug and an affirmation. And what happens is I get back reintegrated. I'm not floating around up there. I'm no longer just a brain with a body dangling on it. Now I am sort of a body, a mind, and a spirit kind of into some form of integration rather than just drifting around out there. So it's an interesting challenge for somebody who has been traumatized and who has learned, as you have and I have, to reintegrate. It's a very important skill set, really. It's a beautiful skill set.
Yes, and I love your mention of working with the eyes. Nowadays, not only in mental health, but also in physical health, trauma recovery, osteopathy, all of these modalities now help with eye movement, loosen up muscles in the back of the neck and the shoulders when they're tight. And of course, we know of EMDR, eye motion desensitization and reprogramming.
For the listeners who don't know that, just briefly tell them what that is, because that is a modality of how to use the eye movements to change the brain state, let's say.
Absolutely. And it's developed both in mental health. EMDR is part of mental health modalities, which help disconnect from previous traumatic events with eye motion desensitization.
Yes.
And they use it in rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation. When you have work injuries, when you have physical injuries, they also use eye motion to loosen up the muscles in your neck and shoulders and back. It's incredible how eye motions have been shown in science to help with physical body and mental, emotional body as well.
Right. I've been really interested, maybe you are too, with the vagal nerve, and that, which is in the back of the head, in the back of the neck, where the neck and the head connect. And that vagal nerve really responds, like you said, to water, to cool, to vibration, to, singing, oming, those kinds of things will help get you reintegrated. So I want to move this conversation to something that's my own personal doodah, and that is I am tremendously interested in being and doing what I do, which is forensic hypnosis. How did you get involved in forensic hypnosis?
Well, I followed a university background in France, first of all, in international trade and negotiation. And when I moved to the United States, I ended up becoming part of the legal field in executive case management. I was working primarily with big law firms, helping them coordinate the resolution of their cases. So I had some legal background. And then I did extensive forensic discovery training with forensic firms. And actually, for the interesting note, I was part of the O.J. Simpson case in Los Angeles, where I was helping the development of prosecution exhibits for the prosecution team.
So time out. Tell everyone, because not everybody knows even what forensic hypnosis is. But you are using hypnosis as a tool to help the prosecution.
Not in the OJ case and not in the Menendez brothers case. At that time, I was mainly case management, helping with exhibits and all of that. But I was immersed in the litigation field for years and immersed in forensic discovery. And as I continued developing constantly my practice and research in hypnosis itself, it became a natural merging of the two.
Yes.
I studied with a police officer and a former Marine with a lifelong experience helping bring resolution to cold cases, and then became naturally fascinated by forensic hypnosis. And when I arrived in Oregon and I opened a clinical practice, I was immediately asked to lend my help in forensic cases. And that's when I became involved with forensic hypnosis. So what forensic hypnosis is basically the application of hypnosis in civil and criminal cases to help with memory revivification and to help open the ability to recover vital leads and informations from crime victims and witnesses, which to this point had been unable to be recovered. According to Senior Special Agent John Kilnap of the ATF, forensic hypnosis may well be the only way to recover vital leads and informations missing from crime victims and witnesses that have been unable, due to traumatic events, due to the very nature of what they experience, have been unable to recover their memories.
Right.
So basically all it is using the state of hypnosis, which is a very natural physical, mental, and emotional relaxation, to place the subjects, whether they're victims, witnesses, or in my case, I've also done forensic hypnosis with murder suspects in county jail.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I haven't done that. I've been to the county jail and I've helped people with communication, but never with forensic hypnosis. So that's very interesting to me.
And it's always so incredibly successful because we use this state, which creates a physical, mental, and emotional relaxation. So we know on a scientific level, from neuroscientists studying the brain in that state of hypnosis, that in the state, what happens is there is a recalibration of the brain chemistry. We're opening the floodgates and flushing out all of the stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. We know that the higher the stress we experience, the less our brain is able to function coherently. And we all experience this. If we're stepping on a stage, let's say, with intimidation and stress, we're not going to be able to perform as well as if we're speaking to our grandparents and our best friends, right?
Right. So I know I have a very good friend, Mark Howell, who's the head of the forensic organization. He's a very good old friend of mine. And he was involved in a study in Texas where there were, over a long period of time, they found that about 75% of the people who were subjected to forensic hypnosis by very well-trained people, about 75%, brought forth some additional information that might have been minuscule or it might have been grand, but you never know, because that information then goes on to the detectives or the investigators, and they're the ones who then have to verify if this was helpful, if it's meaningful. But a good forensic hypnotist, which I know you are because I've seen all your videos, they really take time to meticulously hold the mirror, and they're being videotaped, so that the person who's the witness or the victim, or in your case, even the person who may have perpetrated the crime, is calling to mind the details of what transpired. And the devil isn't in the details. The magic is in the details in this case.
Absolutely.
So I remember on one of your videos, you talked about a case of a woman who was drugged and raped. And would you talk about that for us, please?
Absolutely, Shelley. And honestly, this was one of the most groundbreaking cases, because as you know, we're taught in forensic teachings and schooling, we were taught initially that if there is a case of substance abuse, substance amnesia, substance-induced amnesia, that forensic hypnosis theoretically will not work. And so initially I would turn down these cases of victims calling me saying, I've been date raped, I have no recollection, my drink was tainted with something. And I would respond how I was taught to respond, is that forensic hypnosis would not work in those cases. And then one day I took the case with my research partner, my colleague, Howard Hamilton, who also started as a child, and he's 86 years old. So he's got a good life experience with hypnosis as well as I do. We love to team up on cases. And we took this young woman who had an 8-hour-long complete block of loss of memory. And we decided, let's do forensic hypnosis and see what we can recover. And it was truly groundbreaking, because in hypnosis, what we simply did was bring her back, which is, as you know, that's how we start. We bring the person back to the last coherent memories, clear memories that they have. And in her case, it was sitting in front of the fireplace of this person she had met. And he brought her a small, it was a winter night, it was cold. He brought her a small glass of sake. She didn't drink. So she just took the beverage to her nose and felt the fumes and put it down without, just dipping her lips, but didn't drink it. So he came back with another glass of red wine this time. And she sipped the red wine. Within 15 minutes, she had lost all ability to sense, feel her physical body. She was sitting down, and he asked her if she wanted to go upstairs, and she looked at him and said, I can't feel my body. And it was startling that she asked him, what did you put in my glass? I can't feel my body. And he said, nothing, just red wine. And then she had an 8-hour block of complete blackout, loss of memory.
Wow.
And she finds herself naked when she comes to her senses in an upstairs bathroom, vomiting endlessly.
He could have killed her.
She came very close to dying. She had absolutely no experience with synthetic drugs. She wasn't even a drinker. She had, and she was about 100 pounds, 30 years old, and 8-hour block of, and in the following days, her mind kept spinning. It's a very uncomfortable feeling to have a block of memory that's gone from your mind. Your mind continues to try to go over that block of blackout, trying to find what the missing pieces are, which is what every person who comes to see me with these kinds of memory block tell me. It's agonizing. I need to know what happened during this time. And so what we did with her is we brought her back to the fireplace downstairs, sipping the beginning of that glass of red wine. And then we allowed her with ideomotor response, which is
ideomotor, where you just let a finger do the talking.
Exactly. And it's known by experts to bypass conscious interference. So it's judged as probably even more reliable than verbal input. And I use it quite a lot in my forensic cases. And with her finger motions, she indicated that the scene was continuing to unfold. So one of the criteria that are so important with forensic hypnosis, as you know, is to never lead, never influence, never taint the memories whatsoever in that state. So usually we ask open-ended questions. Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? Are you alone or with someone?
Yes.
What do you see around you? In that case, we just left her there and we asked her to indicate with her finger motions that the scene was continuing. So we would have
Wonderful.
absolutely no interference. And lo and behold, the images started coming back to her mind, almost like a best of, compilation of moments. In her case, it was definitely not best of, but those flashes, and she saw images and heard sounds, and little by little her mind started flashing back all of
wow, it's great.
She had experienced. It was absolutely incredible. For us researchers, it was groundbreaking because it showed us without the shadow of a doubt that you can, in fact, recover memory, even in the case of substance-induced amnesia, even in an 8-hour block of complete loss of memories. We recovered the entire strand of unfolding of event.
Well, gorgeous work. I had one of my first cases in a profound regression is I had a woman who had bladder surgery and she still didn't have control of her bladder. And so I regressed her to the surgery. Now, she was completely out with anesthesia, which is, this is an anesthesia or whatever he gave her, God knows. And she remembered this one piece of information. The doctor, who was very impatient with the nurses, and said, "Give me that instrument or it will never be right."
There you go. There you have it. The imprint.
And that made an imprint in her brain, which it'll never be right. And so when we changed it, of course, this is different than a forensic case where you never change it. You just receive the information. But in this case, we reframed it so that was it right? Yes, it was right. Should she lose control anymore? No, she shouldn't. She's done. She's been helped. She's been fixed. It's all good. But that was a big eye-opener for me of the power of memory under anesthesia, or even when people are in a coma. Absolutely. They hear everything. They know everything. They just can't move, like this tragic situation with your client. And how was it resolved for her? What happened after that?
What was absolutely wonderful is she recovered her peace of mind. She recovered her ability. Once you resolve the black hole, once you're able to understand what happened, now she has a clear absolute power that she didn't have before. And I want to say that being a clinical hypnotherapist, in addition to a forensic hypnotist, I never leave people, even in a forensic session, I don't leave people with a trauma there that's unresolved. I bring the therapeutic approach at the end to help her recover her strength. So she was able to communicate the information. Now, I don't want to go into the details, obviously, for confidentiality reasons, of the legal chain of event that happened afterwards. But I can tell you that knowing what had happened to her brought her clarity of mind that she didn't have before. And then we reconstructed her sense of strength, her sense of becoming a survivor, not a victim, becoming a winner and not a loser. She recovered what a person had tried to rob from her. It's her strength and her truth and her ability to move forward in life as a conqueror and not a victim.
Wow, bravo to you. That was that's gorgeous. That's a gorgeous story. And you see, what people don't always know is that their brain is recording. It's a recording device. Now, people will argue with me about this, but it may not record. They do with me too. It may not record every minute detail, but it certainly does pick up fragmentations through the senses of what is happening. And every single moment, even in dream time, if you want to hypnotize yourself to remember a dream, you can do that. And especially, see, we have this mechanism that happens in trauma, like you mentioned. We do separate so that we're not so pained. We stop the pain by doing that. And the beauty of forensic hypnosis is you recount it usually in a more calm fashion. The brain is more relaxed. You don't have to abreact and have the tremendous, sometimes there's emotion, but a lot of times it doesn't. It's very clear and neutralized, and it's a relief. It's like popping a bad pimple.
Absolutely, Shelley. You know, I keep telling people that all the time. When we have trauma that is repressed, it's festering inside. It's like you were saying, the pus and the infection is, if we keep it trapped, it's festering inside. And, you know, Eastern medicine, as you well know, has taught us for centuries that the emotions that are trapped inside eventually turn into dis-ease, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. So when we go back to root causes, which is the nature of all regressions, right, we are allowing that wound to be cleansed. And it's a state that is so nurturing and protective and calm. And as you well know, we have all of those protective mechanisms. And I like to tell people, I'm combat trained. I'm standing by your side. When we're going back to cause, it's a SWAT team, and you are under my care, and I will keep you safe. And we're addressing the perps. we are debilitating the perps. We're taking the person and we're rescuing. It's rescue missions, basically.
It is rescue mission. Now, I have a personal question for you. You don't have to answer this, but do you ever get a flashback that's been neutralized now as a grown-up?
Yes, you know, it's a good question. People tell me sometimes I feel better, and yet occasionally I'll have a bad memory. I'll have a re-trigger. And I tell them, look, we are never going to become some rigid stand-up object. We are a human, we're a life force in a human body. So because we're in a human body, we have fluctuation of chemical and hormonal levels at all time, excuse me, depending on what we ate and how we slept and our activity levels. So our bodies are continuously fluctuating. And even with a lifelong body of work, we're still going to be triggered occasionally. If somebody's behaving in a rotten way, we're not going to be completely waterproof. We may be shaken a little bit, but what happens when we've done the work is we typically fall less deep and we bounce much more rapidly.
Yes. So I too have had abuse. So I didn't realize exactly why, but whenever I'd see chenille, now chenille is a fabric, you know, it's like,
I know, yeah.
I'd see chenille and my skin would crawl. I would feel this crawly feeling. And now I know that it's from what happened with my mother. And so whenever I see chenille now, I still get the and then I go,
protective mechanism.
I go, you know, Shelley, you're 76 years old and you're going to still go, about chenille. It's just material that somebody made. It's a manufactured, you know, come on, it's just an association. And there's this neutralizing self-talk that I engage in that puts me back into strong, stretched, and centered. Because my job in life, and I guess it's your job, I'm making up a story. My job in life is to be happy.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Okay? My job in life is to teach other people to be happy and to embrace the gift that's called our earth walk. And if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. And I want to encourage other people to not do things that aren't fun. And chenille for me is not fun, so I won't buy a chenille robe. But on the other hand, I don't have to get the crawlies over it. You know, I've learned to just reframe it, let's say.
Excellent. And you know, there is a good technique in modern psychology today, which is desensitization. And you may have heard about it. And they basically would tell you to, with a therapist by your side, obviously, because we don't want to re-trigger trauma unattended, but they would tell you to take something with chenille and little by little to reaccustom yourself to it while you're building positive memories around it. So you could be in a beautiful place, but that's only if you need to, because that's not something you're going to run into necessarily every day of your life.
Not my passion. Not my passion. And I want to say one more thing, because we're coming kind of to a close of our interview, and I want to interview you again. You're amazing.
Thank you.
But, you know, one of the things that happens with brain trauma, and I've noticed this in my years of practice, is that people have been traumatized, as you sounds like you have been with the skull, or have had many concussions. They're often incredibly intuitive,
Oh, yes,
incredibly
of
psychic.
course.
Have you noticed that you are very, very psychic,
Oh,
Genvièv?
yes. You know, it's very simply explainable by the fact that when we are preyed upon, and especially if we were preyed upon at an early age, we have to develop extra sensory abilities in order to save our lives. Just like animals who are prey animals will have extra developed senses of smell and taste and hearing. And so we become basically hypervigilant. So yes, when we grow up in invalidating environments, we have no other ways to survive than to constantly learn to scan our environments and to read the emotions in people around us. That becomes a life coping, a life surviving mechanism. So we have to develop it. And therefore, we grow up becoming empath. Usually, a lot of times, we'll become empath who are capable of feeling, reading, basically what's happening. It's like Sherlock Holmes said, intuition is very highly developed senses that allows you to read signs in a way that's faster for the brain than the brain can actually process. So you're
Wow.
actually reading minute little signs. It could be minute body language signs, but your brain has taken, and your body, because it's also the life force in the body, the intelligence of the gut, that has nothing to do with the intelligence of the brain. Your body and your brain, your life force as a whole, has taken the habit to scan the environment around you and learn how to decipher the emotions in people. So you're correct. In my case, it's extremely developed. I can feel people's emotions as if they were my own, in my own body. I have to actually stop myself and ask myself, is
Yes.
this my emotion or is this their emotion?
Yes. That's called boundaries, everybody. That's what every good helper has to have, is those clear boundaries. And I never thought of it the way you just described it. That was brilliant. I've always thought that because my brain had so many concussions, that I had to use other parts of the brain that took over. And therefore, I think differently than a lot of people who haven't had a lot of concussions.
Oh,
That's how I analyzed it. But now I've got a new way to look at it, thanks to the brilliance of Genvièv. Ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to a close. Genvièv, thank you for coming on our show, Free Hypnosis-IHF. I want to have you back. You are beautiful and amazing.
Thank you
And
so much.
the best way to get a hold of her is youtube.com and go to Genvièv TV. She has wonderful shows. You can reach her also at Genvièv, Genvièv Hypnosis, HYPNOSIS.com. And she is there for you. She is one of the stellar people on the planet who can help you be your very best in everything you do. And until we meet again, have a blessed day and give yourself a big hug, because you
Thank you,
deserve it.
Shelley.
Bye for
Oh,
now.
it's lovely.